Alright, so today we are going to learn how to compare fractions visually. Like my little guy right here. He's looking at you like visual. Anyhow. So, we're going to relate what we know back to what we learned yesterday. So we learned about our fraction strips yesterday. So the first one that we need to learn how to draw is a half. And to draw a half, all you have to do is find the middle point and just draw a line right down through it. Right? Now that's not exactly right, so I can do a little bit better, so I'm going to go back and redraw. So 1/2, okay? Now those are about equal. And then I can do fourths from my half, so I can take my half, and just like we saw yesterday, if you fold the half in half, so I'm going to take each of these halves and put a line down the middle of each half, and now I have fourths. And then for eighths, I can do the same thing. I can draw a line down the middle, draw my fourths, and then I can split those fourths in half so that I have 8 total pieces. Okay? Now, do you notice that my rectangles are all the same length? That's important. Your rectangles have to be the same length. Next, so we've done a half, a fourth, and an eighth. Then we can come over here and we can do a third. Now, thirds are a little bit more tricky. Okay, it takes a little bit better eyeballing, but we can get it if we try. So we have 1/3, so let's say it's about here and then here. Okay, those are equal. And then from thirds, I can make sixths, right? By taking my thirds all the way down and splitting my thirds in halves. So I can take this third right here and split it right down the middle, take the middle third, split it right down the middle, and then take this third and split it right down the middle. And now I have 6 equal parts. Then I can go and do the same thing and draw my 6 lines, right? Now after I've made sixths, I can go back and split each of the 6 in half. That line's not very straight. And I can make 12ths, right? Now if you notice here, my lines aren't very straight, but hopefully y'all can draw straighter lines on a piece of paper. It's a little bit hard on a screen. So we've been able to make halves, fourths, eighths, thirds, sixths, and 12ths. We could also use our knowledge of how to make thirds to help us create ninths. Okay, so I'd take my thirds originally down here, and now I can split them up. Each third I can split up into 3 parts. So again, just like this. And now I have 9 parts. Finally, let's look at fifths. And then from fifths, we're able to make tenths. So you have to draw 4 total lines. So you want those 4 lines spaced out evenly. There's not going to be a line in the middle. So let's just... Nope, that's too big. See, 1, 2, 3. Nope. It takes a little bit of practice. Those are pretty close, I'd say. So now I have fifths, and I can take my fifths, and I can split them in half to make tenths. So when you're drawing fractions visually to represent them, I would always start with the smaller number, and then you can always split that smaller number into halves to get the bigger number, right? Like we started with fifths and we went to tenths. We started with thirds and we can go to ninths. Or we started with thirds and you can go to 6 or 12ths. Or you start with half and you go to a fourth or an eighth. Get those easy ones down first and then make it to the big numbers. Because if you try to just draw 9 lines right here for 10, right, automatically, you're probably not going to have as even of pieces as we have here. Okay, so now how do we actually compare them visually? The first step is you have to draw a big rectangle. So you're going to draw a big rectangle, right? And then you're going to take that rectangle and you're going to split it in half, like that. Okay? So that your rectangles are the same length. After you've done that, you're going to have the top part represent one fraction and the bottom part represent another. So the top part I'm going to have represent sixths. So I'm going to first divide it up into thirds. Whoopsie. Okay. And then I'm going to split my thirds in half. And then the bottom one is fourths, so I'm going to split it in half. And then I'm going to split that half in half. And now I have fourths, right? So then, after I've made the parts, I'm going to shade in the number of parts that I have. So I have 4, 6, so 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to shade that in. And then I have 2 fourths, so I'm going to shade in 2. And so you can see here that 4, 6 is greater than 2 fourths. Okay, again, we're comparing 1/3 to 2/5, so I'm going to draw a big triangle and then draw a line, cutting it across long ways. Now I'm going to make the top represent one fraction and the bottom represent the other. So the top, I'm going to have represent thirds. So that's not quite as equal as I want. That's better. And the bottom represents fifths. So that's not about as equal as I want. Okay, so there we go. I have it to where oh, whoops. Accidentally got rid of that line. I now have it to where I want it. So I have my thirds on top, and I have 1/3, so I'm going to shade in 1/3. And then I have 2/5, so I'm going to shade in 2 of those. And as you can see here, 2/5 is greater than 1/3. I'm going to draw a big rectangle and then divide it long ways in half. I'm going to make the top rectangle represent one of the fractions and the bottom represent another. So the top one I will have represent sixths. So I'm going to start by splitting it up into thirds. And then I'm going to take those thirds and divide those in half. And the bottom represents eighths. So I'm going to divide the bottom in half. And then divide those halves in half. And then I have fourths, so I'm going to take each fourth and divide those fourths in half. Perfect. Now, I'm going to make the top part. I have 4, 6, so I'm going to shade in 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, 6. And then the bottom, I have 5/8, so I'm going to shade in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/8. And as you can see here, 4/6 is just a little bit bigger than 5/8. So I would say 4/6 is greater than 5/8. So to compare fractions visually, the first step is to draw a big rectangle. The next step is to split the triangle in half by height, meaning you're going to cut the triangle height in half by drawing a line through it. Then you will divide the rectangles into equal parts to represent the denominators. For example, if I had 2/4, I would take the top triangle and I would divide it into fourths. And each of those parts has to be equal. Number 4, shade in parts to represent the numerator. For example, like I said, if I had 2/4, I would then shade in 2 of these guys because the numerator is 2 and 2/4. And the final step, after you have both fractions represented and shaded in, is to compare them. The longer fraction is the fraction that's greater.